CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today I've got Liu Liu with me, and we're going to be talking about cross-cultural communications and the importance of being a cross-cultural intelligent leader. I think everybody understands nowadays that we live in a very inclusive world, and we have people from all parts of the world, all parts of societies, speaking all kinds of different languages, and we need to embrace that and understand that and be leaders of those type of organizations. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So Liu Liu, where can people find you?
Yes, thank you very much for having me on the program. So people can find me through LinkedIn, obviously, and then I do have a website called liuliucoaching.com. So that's spelled as Liu coaching.com.
And it will be in the. I'm going to put it in the notes on YouTube if it's not. So I will be if people go to YouTube, they'll pick it up in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a really interesting background, don't you? Because you worked or have done cross-cultural communications pretty much all your life. And you were in China at a university where you had to deal with, what was it, 200 different types of...
Yes, when I was working in the university, we had this language center.
Yeah.
So where we taught Chinese language to international students. At its height, we had students coming from over 120 countries.
120 countries.
Yes, obviously they come from different terms and lenses of a study. So yeah, but it's quite a good experience to start with when you are at a young age.
It's amazing to think that, you know, that all of those different cultures coming together in one place.
Yes, it is quite unique. I really, now looking back, I think it's quite a privileged place to be at the time. Yeah.
So what is cross-cultural communication, and why should we care?
Well, cross-cultural communication really refers to this process of you exchange information and ideas, messages between different cultures. So, because like you say, in the diverse world as we are now, there are different cultural norms, values, and beliefs need to be communicated between each other. But when it comes to communication, this involves not just verbal ones, but also written, and also more importantly, there's non-verbal communications like the gestures, facial expression, body language, and the so-called cultural etiquette. A lot of more nuanced issues relating to that. Yeah.
I once worked with JVC, the Japanese the company, and I had to go on I worked for a company called Capgemini at the time, and I had to go on a little how to work with Japanese companies course before I could actually start engaging with JVC.
Yeah. Well, I would say your company at the time was quite ahead of its time.
It was.
Yeah, to give the employees such orientation and the training course. And even looking at now, I mean, that's the whole point I want to get onto your show is actually, even now, not many companies are aware of that.
No, and I think that they were very, and that was partly because it's a company of people who are used to actually saying, I need this stuff. I remember saying, look, I'm just going to go and walk into a meeting with a whole bunch of Japanese people, and I'm going to I'm going to walk in and think it was a great meeting, and they're going to go, who was that idiot? So I pushed back and said, I need to do this, it changed what was a meeting that was actually would have gone terribly badly to a meeting that actually went okay. I mean, we moved forward in the sales, so that was okay. That's what I wanted. But I totally, we must be walking into meetings and completely making fools of ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, it is how do you call that? With all the good intention, you don't know what you don't know. It's
Yes.
just very factual. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a guy on the team that had actually done some. He'd actually worked in Japan, and actually and done business there with quite big companies like Toyota and stuff like that. And he was, this is what you need to do. This is what you don't do. This is, and but it was just it as I said, it turned what was it. I would have just made a complete mess of the meeting if I hadn't have done that. It was just so important. Now I'm obviously I'm sold. So, but assume I'm not sold. So why do we need to do this?
Well, I think the reason why people need to do this is as a manager in particular, um, you need to understand actually there's a huge difference between managing a team
Mm,
versus managing a cross-cultural team. So I think I recently wrote an article in the Brains magazine talking about this very issue. This is one missing tool in the management toolbox. So, I mean, over the years as a manager myself, you receive all kinds of trainings, various, financial management, people management, you name it, you get it. But um, not actually, apart from the company you worked with, you just mentioned, uh, people I ask around, they don't receive any training
mm,
on how to manage a cross-cultural team or international team, if you like. Yeah, this could be. Then they end up in a situation that they tried all the methods they know of, then the team still doesn't perform and not delivering results. And at the same time, you end up damaging relationships, a lot of the headaches, and then you got you end up in a sandwich situation in the middle. So you got your boss breathing down your neck to say, "Wow, you're not delivering the results," and then you got your team on the other hand, so kind of just not working properly, either it can end up being overtly conflicting with you or having conflict, or just passively aggressively not agreeing with the way you work. Then you don't know why. This can be hugely damaging to managers because at one point you are a good manager and all of a sudden you end up doubting yourself. Say, what have I done wrong? Why am I moved from a very capable manager being given this huge task, it's prestige situation, and then end up not delivering. So yeah, it can be quite damaging.
Yeah, I've run teams of people from multiple countries, and I totally agree with you that So I had someone who was Polish, someone who was Russian, someone who was Egyptian, someone who was Israeli, someone who was Dutch, and each of them have their own different views of the world and views of the other people in the team, and I think there was an expectation, because I work for a US software company, that you would basically fall in line with the US culture.
Yeah.
But that was a mistake, and I went through a lot of leadership training at this company. But as you say, I was never taught about the different impacts between the different cultures. Now, I thought that it would be the Israeli and the Egyptian that wouldn't get on, but in fact, they said, no, we're great friends. And when we had an away day, they really bonded. It was the Pole and the Russian that didn't get on. Now, this was the days before the Russians went into Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so my expectation, or I thought, they would actually they would be the people that would get on, and it was so I had a completely wrong in terms of my cultural view of the team and the way that the team would interact.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I think you broadly speaking within the around the world, you have different kind of cultural groups. If you like, you can group the countries together, but even within the one region, you can have regional differences. Like you said, the Russian and the Polish, you would think they kind of come from the European continent, but they definitely come from very different cultural group, if you like. Like the Russians are more so-called relationship, high context culture versus the Polish is more akin to European, the low context, the task-oriented culture. So no wonder you end up having this kind of conflict. While the Egyptians and Israeli, being in the Middle East, they are quite relationship based. Although it seems to be, and even you go back to the Jewish tradition, again, very relationship based. So therefore, they understand how to work together. You build relationship first, and then you talk about work. Yeah.
Yeah. So what as leaders can we do to enable us to get a to start thinking about cross cultural work and trying to understand people? What is it that we can do?
Yes, I think the cross-cultural, like you said, we started with cross-cultural in communication, but there's more to that. I think if you want to be a good leader, it's more to do with cross-cultural intelligence, the full package of being first to understand how you yourself, what is your culture, what is your behavior, why do I behave the way I do, is more of a self-awareness, the starting point. And then you look at the other side, say your willingness, your mindfulness, and the empathy to be able to learn about other cultures you're working with. And then you look at where's the compromise, how do I adapt. But the thing to manage a cross-cultural team is people have to go out of their way. Everybody needs to make some contribution, need to make some move, because otherwise they can't work together. They all need to come out of their little circle to meet somewhere. So yeah, so that's a starting point to work
I
cross-culturally.
found for me, it was about going out and meeting the person. I work for a tech company, so actually, we were using the equivalent of Zoom before even people knew what Zoom was. I've been using those sort of technologies for 10, 15 years. And we would have lots of team meetings where people would dial in. But it wasn't until you went to Warsaw in Poland and or I went to Moscow and I met the people and they kind of felt, when you come to a call like this, you tend to bring a different person. Whereas when you meet the person and we went to a restaurant in Warsaw, or we went, and they tend to be, more of that, who they were at home, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And getting to know that person, it was about spending time with them and understanding them. And that was time really well spent.
Yeah, definitely. So what you alluded to is actually the importance of building relationships
Yes.
and gain trust in a relationship-based
Absolutely.
culture. So, and you did exactly the right thing, but vice versa. I remember when I went to Cambodia, interestingly, to meet my partners in the first time many years back. One group is expat-led companies, organization. So the starting point is they met me in the office, almost like give me a little interview.
Okay.
So that's the way they approach things, business first. So they want to understand what qualifies me to take up this piece of task. So while with the Cambodians, similar to what you have done, is they want to have meal with you, drink tea with you first, understand you as a whole person. Then they start to trust you as a whole person. Then they can talk about work. They come to the office next day or so. So it's different, entirely different approach. Yeah.
Yes, I remember being in Saudi Arabia and having lunch with the senior management of the company that we were doing some work with. And it wasn't until I'd sat down and we were having, they laid on this amazing salad. And a lot of the people in Saudi Arabia have either been to the UK or actually been educated here. So I was actually talking to people with English accents, actually with English public school accents. And it was at that point when I guess, using the term breaking bread with them, and actually talking where they start to relax, and you get to understand that they are who they are rather than the persona that they quite often put on in meetings and stuff. Again, that was well worth it.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
So you getting to know them and then building trust. And what else can we do?
I think I would really like to also highlight a few other principles when you want to manage in a cross-cultural team successfully. We touched on that some of them already. One is really to be clear. The difference managing a team is different managing a cross-cultural team. So you mustn't under any illusion say, oh, the same thing would apply. If I just, I was talking to a friend, came to dinner on Saturday, and he works in a finance management company providing financial services. And he said to me, I asked him, so what is the challenge of kind of working cross-culturally? He has teams in India, in Malta. And he said, well, I wish that Indians don't have to, when I deal with them, I don't have to go through 7 layers of hierarchy to reach the point of to the person I need to talk to. I wish they can just let me to get on with it. So that's exactly the thing. So you should under no illusion the things is going to be the same. The other principle is say when we are faced with the same situation, the same issue, a different culture and different kind of people will have entirely different take on things. One typical clashing point in the business world is the time management. So I'm sure you came across quite a few that.
And I'd like to point out that Liu Liu turned up 5 minutes early. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Exactly. So exactly that point. So yeah, if you work with kind of European time called so-called linear time concept, then yeah, the time is a one after another task is organized around it. But when you are working with a flexible time culture, the timetable is a suggestion. So what do you do about it? So when people turn up half an hour late or never turn up, what do? You can't not to speak to them ever again. So these are real challenges. There's another point I want to mention is because many companies are now very hot on this personality, team dynamics, and so forth. So that can cloud the issue a bit. So that don't confuse the personality differences with cultural differences. So it's very hard to distinguish, but it's important. So it's not always just the personality differences. I think the cultural differences is very much need to be paid attention to. Really, these are some principles I really want to highlight to the managers. Yeah. And your listeners.
And what about, so we've got time management. What about financial management as well?
Financial management is a very hot potato. So that linked with the cultural concept called guilt culture versus shame culture. So guilt culture largely derived from the European culture, the Christian rooted cultures, the sin and the guilt. So it's very clear cut. So when it comes to money management, I often talk to my clients and teach them to say, it's not just money management, but it's more to do with money mismanagement. That actually these two cultures really can hit up. So in the guild culture, that when it comes to money mismanagement, it's very strict. If you mismanage £1 or £10, it's the same principle. But in the shame culture, it's not. So it's much more fluid. So it's all to do your bad behavior when it comes to money. It's all to do with whether your bad behavior first will be found and bring shame to yourself, to your family. So therefore, people have very fluid view on how the company money or assets, or even cut down to the company car, can be used. So yeah. I had cases like in my clients, they all have this sort of visibility products, right? The company logo, T-shirt and cap and all that. So before they know it, the whole village is wearing it. So and then a company car use. So in the UK, in the US, in Europe, so the company car is for business. But in many other countries, the company car is used to drop off the kids to school on the way and pick up the wife on the way back. So these are quite common in this country, in those cultures, but then it brings a cost to the company related to the money management. So it's quite tricky.
Liu Liu, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about cross-cultural intelligence. It's a fascinating subject, having managed and led teams across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I mean, I love hearing about other people's cultures. It's one of the reasons why I love travel, is actually going and understanding and seeing how people view the world, because we see there's one thing, but we all see it differently. So remind people where they can get hold of you.
Yes, so reach me out on LinkedIn and also through my website. So the quickest way actually just through LinkedIn. Send me a message, and like you know that each case is unique.
Yes.
And I would love to talk to you to understand what is bothering you, and we can work something out and how I can support you to bring my the how do you call that, shorten the period, so to bring all the condensed experience into you, so you don't have to learn the hard way.
Liu, thank you so much for coming on and sharing that, and I really appreciate you sharing.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
As I said, I'm repeating myself, but it's a fascinating subject.
Absolutely, we all I'm still learning myself, so it's ongoing.
Yes, and I'm pleased I wasn't completely wrong. When I was doing stuff, I went by my gut, and I'm glad that but I wish I'd had a plan.
Yeah.